Welcome back to this week's episode of The Big Sky Now. I'm Josh Dugan. On this week's show, we're going to have Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake and Kalispell jump on the show, talk a little bit of Montana Griz football, break down the Big Sky as a whole, and give his offensive and defensive MVPs at the midway point of the season in Big Sky play. And we'll move along to the weekly Big Sky football panel. As usual, we got Mark Nelke out of Idaho and Ian Bivona out of Washington on the show. We're going to give our surprises from week 3 of conference play, our midseason MVPs, break down the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks and their rise, that Idaho and Montana game on ESPN2 this weekend in Moscow. Vandals host that one. Big time game on the horizon. Lots to get to this week on the Big Sky Now. Let's start out with that interview with Fritz, and then we'll dive into the weekly panel.
All right, joining me again on the Big Sky Now. Once again, Fritz Neighbor. Always good to talk some Griz. Fritz, happy to have you on here. Griz coming off a impressive 31-23 win on the road, ranked battle with UC Davis. Had their ups and downs, but impressive win nonetheless. Just wanted to get your reaction to the win, and that offense came to life. Clifton McDowell looked good passing the ball. Aaron Fonts, Big Sky Player of the Week, receiver, had a big game. So just kind of your reaction to the win and their performance.
Yeah, we texted a little bit about how maybe Clifton could have been the player of the week too. It was an interesting game. You know, if they had a chance to go up early, pretty big, kind of take command of that game, which is what happened a couple years ago, I think, down there when they crushed them 45-20. But little lack of discipline, lack of ball security on Clifton's part, losing the ball at the 5-yard line going in. Then they scored. Then they should have got the ball back, and unsportsmanlike penalty extended Davis's drive. And then there was another unsportsmanlike penalty against Bobby Houck, a first. And pretty soon it was 7-7, and it was a battle from then on. It was a good game. You know, I was kind of like concerned about a rare lack of discipline, I thought, on the part of the Griz early on, but they got it squared away. That little toss they took to Gilman in the third quarter where he tore off the 85-yard run. You saw why they like him so much. He's a redshirt freshman, and he ran away from everybody. And that I thought was maybe the key play of the game, just because it gave him an 8-point lead, kind of had the Aggies a little bit more into we need to do something right away, and they didn't really have it going. It's a nice win. It's always nice to win on the road. And I think I mentioned last week, you know, the Griz losing at NEU was a pretty bad loss. It doesn't look as bad now. But, you know, you just win a couple games and things are all right with the world again. And then we look at NEU, what they've done the last 3 weeks. Beat the Griz, probably should have beat Sac State, and then won on the road at Weber State pretty decisively, actually. So, you know, things are a long way from being settled. A huge game Saturday in Moscow. Wish I was going to go. Thought about it. But it's going to be fun to watch in the twilight hours. Probably that game might not get over until midnight our time. We'll see.
Right, 8:30 p.m. kickoff, ESPN2 nationally televised game. You kind of led right into it. That was my next question, was another big road game, number 3 team in the nation in both the media and coaches poll and the Vandals. What do you think the Griz need to do to have a chance to go in there and compete and maybe steal a win in Idaho and really make some noise? Because there are going to be underdogs going into it, but that type of game, late night game, nationally televised, both teams are going to be motivated. It's going to be a competitive game. Just your thoughts on what needs to go right for the Griz to hang in there and maybe make a run at it.
Yeah, well, I was really impressed with Idaho last year when they came into Washington Grizzly and won with Giovanni McCoy making one of his first starts. He's still there. Hayden Hanton is still there. The Griz are still playing the 3-3-5, which didn't work very well last year against Idaho. If you go back to last week in the Davis game, when they put pressure on Miles Hastings, the Davis quarterback, who's very good, things went well. So I think they need to figure out a way to get to McCoy, at least put some pressure on him. He's so nifty and seems to know where everybody is on the field. We'll talk about him a little bit more, I have a feeling, here in a while. It's tough, you know, and Idaho's, man, they're good. And I really like having them back in the League A and having them back in the league and being really good B, because it makes the league better. It reminds me of just a few years ago in the 80s when I was a college student, and them in Nevada and Boise State rolling the Big Sky, and it was tough for the Griz to get to the top, and they've got a long road to hoe to get through this weekend, and then through the rest of their schedule, which includes home games against Sac State and Montana State. So starts here. Saturday's a big game. I'm looking forward to it. Should be good.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to that one as well. I think you made a lot of good points about getting to McCoy. Got to find a way to pressure him. I keep thinking that as well. That could be a real difference maker if they make him uncomfortable in the pocket for sure. Because when he's slinging it, they're tough to beat. No, I'm excited for that one. Like I said, it's a late kickoff, nationally televised. Just feels like, I know they stayed in the Pac-12 after dark. Weird stuff happens. You never know. This is the type of game in late night college football. Go steal a win. This is a good opportunity for the Griz. I did want to ask you as far as Montana's national ranking. They came in at 10th in the coaches poll, 16th in the media poll. You know, you can only look into the rankings so much right now at this point in the season, but just your thoughts on how do you think the Griz should be ranked? Does that look about right, or kind of in the tier you would rank them in, or how are you thinking about the Griz on the national scale this season?
You know, I haven't voted in the Stats Perform poll since, well, I left the business in 2014. So it's been since then, and I don't miss it because it's, you know, if you do it right, you're spending 90 minutes or 2 hours on it. You know, I'd rather have those hours back. But if I did vote, I would probably say 16th is about right now, given the results we've had and how much season is left. You know, NEU's loss doesn't look as bad now. It could look even better in the future. Just depends on how it goes in Moscow and the 3 home games that they have left, which I think are winnable, but who knows? And I tend to trust the media poll more than the coaches poll. I don't know how the coaches could quite pick him 10th. They picked him pretty high, I thought, last week after they lost to NEU. So, I mean, we'll see. Or I guess it was 2 weeks ago. They barely dropped in the coaches poll, really in either poll after they lost to NEU. So, polls are what you make of them. At least there's a few of us voting now. There used to be just 4 back in the 80s. And Boise State got beat by a not very good Long Beach State team back when Long Beach State had a football program. That's before your time, I think. I don't think you were even born.
Way back when. Yeah. I knew they did, but that was before my time. Yeah.
Yeah. And they beat Boise State, and Boise State actually moved up in the rankings. That's how kind of unbelievable the rankings were back then. They're better now, but you still have to take them with a little grain of salt.
Yeah, no, well said, the grain of salt. And I agree. I think the Griz I was surprised to see him at 10th. I was like, Griz Nation's probably loving that. But I thought more maybe the 15th range, you know, maybe a tough loss and have a chance to prove it down the stretch, maybe keep moving up in the rankings because they're going to have the chance playing some steep competition. Moving on to kind of the whole Big Sky right now, there's been a lot of interesting stuff to start the season, but is there anything jumped out as most surprising? I know we mentioned NAU. They're really rolling right now. It feels like all of a sudden NAU or Eastern Washington, they're both on the cusp of being, well, Eastern Washington bouncing right back, but NAU, they're both competing to be a top 25 caliber team all of a sudden. So just kind of any surprises that have jumped out to you so far in the conference as a whole?
You know, I think it's a little early to talk about surprises other than NAU. I think they've been pretty impressive the last 3 weeks. Coincidentally, they gave that redshirt freshman, Adam DeMonte, his first 3 starts, and I think he studied things. You know, it's not like they piled up a bunch of yards last week at Weber, but he managed the game and they played well and they won. They won the turnover battle and they won 27-10. I think an interesting thing about NEU is I was watching a little bit of their replay at Weber, and they noted that they went 5 for 5 on 4th downs against Sac State. So then I went back and looked, and they went 2 for 2 against Weber, and they went 4 for 5 against Montana. Now, is that all due to a redshirt freshman quarterback? I don't know, but they seem to be playing with a lot of poise and confidence and knowing what they need to do to get those chains moving. And I think you wish they weren't 2 and 4 because they look like kind of like a playoff team to me, whereas UC Davis really didn't. UC Davis had a lot of mistakes. Montana made enough mistakes in that game to hurt themselves, and UC Davis couldn't take advantage, which kind of surprised me. Other than that, I don't really have any big news. I just, going to be fun to watch NEU, see how they do the rest of the year.
Yeah, no, that too, my eyes. Kind of all of a sudden, I've been really keeping an eye on the Lumberjacks. They've been kind of the real deal. I have been a little surprised by Weber State's slow start, but I remember we talked right off the bat. You're like, I don't know if Weber's going to have it this year quite like other years. So he might have had the crystal ball on that one just a little bit. So I got to give you credit there. And I did want to talk a little bit about Montana State, just their tough schedule down the stretch. They got at Sac State, at Idaho. November 4th, they have NAU in Bozeman, where all of a sudden that's not just a gimme game. And then Eastern Washington in Bozeman, and then Brawl of the Wild in Missoula. All of a sudden, that's a grinder of a schedule for the Bobcats. A lot of tests down the stretch. I'm just wondering, is it realistic they could lose one or two games easily to end that stretch? Obviously, Bobcats fans, they're rolling. They want to keep all these streaks going and this and that. But this is a tough schedule, a lot of tough road games. Just, is it realistic, I guess, for them to go undefeated? Or what are your thoughts on the rest of the year for the Cats?
Yeah, I think the league is tough enough that they could definitely lose a game. And really, they can afford to lose one.
Mm-hmm.
The league is pretty balanced, pretty deep. I didn't think it was that balanced to start the year. And there's still some teams that are, clearly at the bottom. But when you had NEU and Eastern kind of rocketing up and Davis trending toward the middle, Weber trending toward the middle, there's some parity there. And I just think the Cats are good enough. They're good enough to run the table, and it might be something where if they dropped one, it wouldn't hurt them at all. Might do them some good in the long run. Should be interesting to see if and when Tommy Malott gets back. But man, they've been on a roll, and I'm sure they appreciated having that week off last week, as did most of the league. There's only 3 games last week. Not a whole lot to write about, but I think the Cats are for real. I mean, obviously, they could have beat South Dakota State on their home field. That's a very solid defending championship team. So I don't see the Cats letting up a whole lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. I just had to mention it because I looked at that schedule and I'm like, regardless, they are dominant and they've been really good, but they're going to get tested for sure. And like you said, it could be good for them where heading into the postseason, having a tough schedule, playing some really difficult games, that teaches you what you need to get better at. So no, very, very true, Fritz. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the season for the Cats as well. As far as I did mention, kind of getting into some Big Sky offensive and defensive MVPs. We're going to talk about that on the panel this week. So I thought I'd get yours if you want to throw a few names out there. Anybody really jumping out on either side of the ball for you?
Well, I think the 2 main ones on offense are Giovanni McCoy and then Sean Chambers. The job Chambers has done running MSU's offense in the absence of Tommy Malott has just been amazing, And I remarked to Colton Ronez, who was a not really a competitor. He's a friend that works for Skyline Sports. It's like, I don't know, does anybody else have in the Big Sky have a Sean Chambers? I mean, he just took off on that 85-yard against Weaver. He just was gone. And, you add him to a team that was already really physical up front on both sides of the ball. I think it's between him and McCoy. What might hurt Sean Chambers is, Tommy Malott will come back and we'll start splitting time again. So if I had to pick one right now, I'd say it was McCoy. I mean, they're 3-0 in league. They've only had the 1 loss. They've got both Montana schools at home. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but Giovanni's probably the odds-on pick, but I like Chambers as a dark horse right now.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. And I was thinking Sean Chambers right now, his performances kept the number 2 team in the country looking like the number 2 team in the country. That's not easy to do. You usually have a drop-off when you're starting quarterback, especially somebody like Tommy Malott goes out. He stepped right in, played right up to that caliber, and had that team looking like the force that they are. So, no, he deserves a lot of credit. Has there anybody on the defensive side of the ball jump out at you? It's a little tougher on defense because so many moving parts, especially in today's game, but just your thoughts on anybody standing out.
Well, the preseason pick is Winston Reed, the safety from Weaver. He's got the stats right now. I mean, he's up there in tackles and passes defended. And but I also like, I'm probably going to script his name, Eloy Quiddy from NEU, defensive lineman who's just been a force. And Brody Grebe, the defensive lineman from MSU. He's from tiny Millstone, Montana, usually a basketball school. They usually have like a dozen boys and they all play basketball and they're all really good in the Class C ranks. And now he and his brother, he's a younger brother, have both been really good defensive linemen at Montana State. So shout out to him. Maybe a dark horse would be Braxton Hill from the Griz, because he's really, I thought, has been playing well the last 3 weeks, making a ton of tackles, being in the right spot at the right time, very physical. So there's 4 of them. There's probably a couple I should be shouting out, but we have half a season left, and it's all kind of up in the air as far as that goes.
No, 100%. Like getting Braxton Hill getting a shout out. I've been thinking every time I watch, he's a tackling machine. One of those guys, very throwback linebacker, just knows around the football. He's going to be in on the run game. I've been impressed, very physical play. So, no, it's been fun watching him, and all the other guys stand out as well. It's been a heck of a year. I was looking through all the defensive numbers before this, and all the guys you mentioned were right at the top of the list. So, no, well said, Fritz. And if there's anything else you want to throw out there, talk a little, anything else in the Big Sky, feel free. If not, great stuff as always, and just looking forward to a really fun stretch run the next couple weeks. And it's going to be pretty crazy for both the Cats and the Griz being up here in Montana. I think they're going to have some really fun games on the horizon for both schools. So it's going to be a great time to be a Big Sky fan, no doubt.
Yeah, so I think we'll just see each other Saturday night, gather around ESPN2 at the Interlake office. Sound like a plan?
Yep, nope, that should be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, as always, to the one and only Fritz Neighbor for jumping on the show, talking some Griz football, talking some Big Sky football. Let's jump into that weekly panel. Thanks again to Mark and Ian, as always, for taking the time to get on here. And thanks again to you for checking out the show.
Welcome back to the weekly Big Sky Now media panel featuring Mark Nelke out of Idaho and Ian Bivona out of Washington. Thank you guys, as always, for taking the time to join the show. And thank you to everybody watching at home. We appreciate it. So we're going to break down a little bit of week 3 of Big Sky play and kind of take a look at the conference as we near the midway point of the season. Got a big ranked matchup on the horizon with Montana and Idaho as well. Definitely get to that one, and plenty of other Big Sky stuff. So just diving into it, get started with you, Mark. Just your biggest surprise from week 3 of conference play, and just kind of go from there.
Okay, I guess there wasn't that much. There was only 3 games, and one was Idaho winning at Cal Poly as expected. Montana's win was nice for them. They've been under a little heat, but seeing NAU go up to Weber and win 27-10, that kind of caught my eye too. It's like either maybe NAU is really good or Weber isn't, or somewhere in the middle. So that would be my surprise.
Yeah, hard to argue that one. How about yourself, Ian?
Yeah, like Mark said, there weren't too many games this week, but all 3 of the Big Sky games had road winners. Obviously, Idaho wasn't a big shock to most people winning on the road against Cal Poly, but Northern Arizona picking up its first ranked road wins since 2015, and Montana also winning up on the road against UC Davis. So
yeah,
kind of interesting to see.
Definitely, and the thing that really jumped out at me was not only did Northern Arizona win, they won, they dominated that game. It was a convincing 27-10 victory on the road. And like Mark said, is it Weber State's not as good as we thought, or is Northern Arizona that good? I'm a little confused at this point. So now both those teams have my attention, kind of trying to figure out, Weber State just falling off the map a little, or is Northern Arizona just the real deal? Because you definitely don't expect Weber State to lay an egg at home like that. So interesting stuff. As far as performance of the week, Mark, if you want to get that one rocking and rolling, and we'll go from there.
And it's kind of the same thing. I was thinking about NAU because they're 2-1 in league, 2-4 overall, but you look at their upcoming schedule. They basically they have to win out to get to 7, because 7 is kind of the magic number to get considered for the for the playoffs. I mean, I don't know if teams that only win 6 games, if sometimes they sneak in too, but it tends to be Coach X says 7 is the number. So that means NAU's got to win out, and they got they got Portland State this week, Cal, and then UC Davis, Montana State, Northern Colorado, and Eastern. So the chances of going 5-0 are going to be pretty tough. I mean, even if they beat Montana State, I mean, it could come down to their game at Eastern being for a playoff berth for whoever wins that one.
Yeah, all of a sudden, Northern Arizona is kind of the story in the Big Sky right now. It's hard to stay away from that. How about you, Ian, performance of the week?
I know I've gone with some teams units the last couple of weeks, but I want to give a shout out to a player. I'm sure everyone saw the highlight of Montana wide receiver Aaron Fonts, that catch he had in the end zone. 5 catches on the day, 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. But that one catch he had, that was unreal. I still don't know how he caught that.
Yeah, no doubt a Sports Center top 10 kind of a play for sure. Gotta love the Fonts getting the shout out there. I went with the quarterback on the play there. Clifton McDowell was my performance of the week. The Grizzlies have had so much questions around the offense. I was ranting and raving a few weeks ago about how they have had no consistency, and he's kind of quieted the noise. He's looking comfortable under center. 3 touchdown passes, 243 yards, no interceptions, added 49 yards with his legs. So just kind of the performance Montana needed at quarterback, because that offense has not looked like it has any rhythm. All of a sudden, midseason, maybe they're finding their midseason stride a little. Fonts has really emerged, and they have Junior Bergen and Keelan White as well, good receivers on the outside. So I got to give Clifton McDowell a shout out. I felt like the Griz offense finally turned a quarter. Despite some bad penalties and some costly turnovers, they were able to get it done on the road. So gotta love that. So as we are nearing the midway point, I just kind of mentioned midseason form, perfect timing, but almost to that midway point of the college football season, so few of the teams have played over half of their games. So kind of wanted to get your guys' takes on offensive and defensive MVPs in the conference so far and any major takeaways. But Ian, if you want to kick this one off, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I'm sure this is a guy that all three of us are going to be talking about, but Idaho running back Anthony Woods, 662 yards on 99 attempts so far this year, and that ridiculous 10 touchdowns through the 6 games they played, 5 games, 6 or 5 games. Anyway. But I also want to give a quick little keep an eye out on Sacramento State quarterback Caden Bennett, having a pretty decent year, and he's got that win over Stanford under his belt. 7 touchdowns and the second most passing yards per game in the Big Sky so far this year. So maybe someone else to keep an eye on besides that true focus on Anthony Woods so far.
Yeah, no, Caden Bennett's been absolutely balling, and being up here in the Northwest, we don't see him quite as much. Being down in Northern California, Bennett and all that, but he's a heck of a player. How about yourself, Mark? Anybody jump out as far as offensive MVPs or big takeaways? And if you have a defensive MVP, we'll jump back to that in a little, Ian, and keep the ball rolling.
Yeah, I would agree with Ian. Obviously, Anthony Woods has stood out for what he's done. The thing with Idaho is they're capable of being so balanced that they kind of cancel each other out. You know, he plays well, or it could be McCoy doing his thing, or Hayden Hatton, or Jermaine Jackson, and stuff like that. So it kind of depends on the game. So
yeah, no doubt about it. Believe it or not, I ended up going with Anthony Woods as well. I think that really says a lot, especially nowadays. It's rare you see a running back leading the charge. It's usually the quarterback running the show. And McCoy, I like to think of him, he's kind of like the conductor on the offense. Anthony Woods, like the engine of that train. When he's going, they're almost impossible to stop. So can't knock that. Honorable mentions for me. I did like Montana State's Sean Chambers has kind of stepped in on a top team in the country and kept them looking like a top team in the country. That's hard to do. And, of course, Javani McCoy, he's right there in the conversation. You could easily make the argument he's worthy of it as well. So Idaho, well represented in the MVP conversation. As far as defensive MVP, Ian, did you have anybody in particular?
Yeah, Montana State defensive end Brody Grebe obviously stood out to me. He's got 3.5 sacks through the first 2 Big Sky games they played, 2 forced fumbles and 12 tackles as well. If he can keep that up, I think it's going to be hard to keep that award out of his hands.
Yeah, when I talked to Fritz for the podcast I mentioned, I'll edit that in here. That was the name that came up for his defensive MVPs as well. Heck of a season for the Montana State pass rusher, no doubt. How about yourself, Mark? Anybody on defense you're rolling with?
Yeah, kind of the same thing with Idaho. On offense, they've had several guys play well on defense, so it's been kind of a team effort. They've been holding a lot of teams in check, and so it's they've got a good pass rush and good DBs and good linebackers and stuff like that. So they pretty much have everything it takes to make a long run.
Yeah, going with the team nod for Idaho. No, and I like that. This one could have gone a lot of different ways. I will say Montana's only allowing 19 points per game. So similar to Idaho, they're a unit where a lot of different faces make plays. But I'll roll with Griz cornerback Trevin Gradney. He has 5 turnovers forced. He had 4 interceptions in the first 4 games and forced a fumble. So although maybe the consistency won't be there down the stretch to put up those type of numbers on a defense that's needed to make plays to hang around, he's had a big part in that, had a couple of momentum swingy type of plays. Again, defense is so tough because it's such a unit kind of a thing. It's hard to pick one individual. Like Marcus said, you look at Idaho, look at Montana, similar, Montana State even. So it's tough, but I got to go with Gradney for 4 interceptions. He's leading the Big Sky in picks, so we'll give him a little love there. Let's just get into speaking of Montana and Idaho, picks and predictions for that game. It's a late kickoff, little Brown Stein game. It's on ESPN2. I always feel like those nationally televised games, extra little bit of juice, those late night games, things get a little crazy. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on this one, and kind of what are you expecting on Saturday? What should be a fun night of FCS football?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. I mean, a few weeks ago, as you know, Montana was struggling. We're kind of wondering, okay, what kind of game is this going to be? And then you look down, and they're coming off maybe their best game of the year this past week, and they're 5-1, and so it should be a really good game. It's still Montana, Idaho. They've had great meetings ever. I've been to a few in the 80s and 90s that were just shootouts, and this could be another one of those.
Yeah, I feel like it's anytime you get these rivalry games, a little bit throw out everything that happened before, and these guys are going to leave it all on the field, no doubt about that. How about yourself, Ian? Any thoughts for this game Saturday?
I'm interested to see if Montana can put another good week of offense together to keep up with this high-powered Idaho offense. I think it's going to be a heck of a game to watch.
No doubt about it. I said it last week about the UC Davis matchup for Montana, but this is a game you do not want to fall behind against Idaho. If the Grizzlies have to play from behind, it might be over quick. But if they can come out and have a couple plays early and avoid those costly turnovers like they had last week, I think they can make it interesting. I'm leaning towards Idaho to take care of business at home. They're trying to cement themselves as an FCS power right now. Montana, though, they've been doing it. They're going to come prepared. I always feel like every time I think I have Montana figured out, they bust out a couple more tricks out of the hat. So we'll see if they have some things up their sleeve. But overall, just going to be an awesome game. Anytime you get those nationally televised games, it just adds a little juice for sure. Another matchup that probably is a little more likely on the outcomes, but we'll bring it up anyways here in the Northwest. Eastern Washington at Idaho State. Eagles going to be the heavy favorite. You guys see Idaho State making any noise in this one, or is this a likely blowout for the Eagles?
I think if Idaho State had a little more juice in their run game, they could. But Idaho State has, so far in their 2 Big Sky games, they're the second worst rushing team with only 74 yards per game against Eastern's pretty porous run defense. But hey, maybe anything could happen. I still think Eastern takes this win pretty handedly.
Yeah, as I'd expect. But yeah, how about yourself, Mark? Any predictions for this one?
Yeah, I mean, weird things sometimes happen at Holt Arena in Pocatello, and that's Idaho State's chance. I mean, they're playing a little bit better this year than they have been. Eastern, we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. A lot of times, they could know, but we don't know, and probably Idaho State won't know until game time. So I still think they're the favorite, and it's kind of up to them to go down there and take care of business, whoever their quarterback is. They
well
need to
said.
keep winning.
Yeah, no, and styles make fights, as they say, and both these teams love to throw the football, and the Eagles, I do give them the edge, so that kind of adds it up for me. I don't see Idaho State beating Eastern Washington at their own game. Last game here that's kind of Northwest-based, I thought I'd throw it out there, just anything to watch in this one. But Cal Poly at Montana State, expect another blowout. Do you guys think, I heard Tommy Malott might be back, do you guys think if he is healthy, would you roll him out there in a game like this, or maybe wait until you have Idaho and Sac State in a couple of weeks? Your guys' thoughts on that and just that football game? Ian, if you want to kick it off.
Yeah, I'd probably wait another week or 2 before you roll him out. I think this is just going to be a pretty blowout of a game, like you just said. Good offense and gets to, not as good defense. I think this one, like Montana State will handle business.
Yeah, should run away with this one. Mark, any thoughts on this game? Or you're like, let's just move on to the next one, blowout on the horizon here.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could see holding Malott out for another week, or maybe if there's a way to get him in, at least get him a series so he gets some playing time again, kind of gets used to playing. I mean, sometimes that's harder to do in football because it doesn't take much to have something freaky happen. But I think ideally maybe if they could get him in for a few plays just to get him back in there.
Yeah, just an interesting side note in a game that kind of felt like a formality. Montana State's going to roll, but I did see on Twitter something Malott might be back for this week. So you start wondering, how much do you use him? Because that's the last thing they need is him to roll back out in a blowout. And like you said, a freak thing happens. That's the the blessing and the curse of football. Any play, anything can happen. You really never know. But another game on the horizon, I did want to ask you guys, two teams who are reeling a little bit, came into the season ranked, UC Davis and Weber State. This is kind of an interesting matchup. It's in Ogden. Your guys' thoughts on this one, because this could be kind of a season-defining game for both UC Davis or Weber State. Whoever drops this one, it feels like all of a sudden it's completely fallen out of the rankings. They're going to be struggling to make a run in conference play. Whoever wins this one has a little bit of life left. So any thoughts on this game? Ian, we'll start with you just to throw it out there in what would have been a ranked versus ranked battle, but I'm not sure if they're still cracking the top 25. I'll try to look that up.
Yeah, I mean, until I see a little more of that Weber State offense, in good faith, I just can't pick them to win. UC Davis is obviously coming off that tough game against Montana last week. I think that kind of gives them a little extra motivation in a game, like you said, this is similar to that one they had against Montana last week.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a crucial game for both teams. Any thoughts on that one for you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, UC Davis is playing a little bit better than Weber. It looks like even though neither of them are playing up to what people thought they were going to be. I mean, you're right. You mentioned this could almost be a loser out game for whoever loses. This could be out. The loser would have to win their last 4 games to get to 7, the magic number, and so the winner would have at least a little bit of leeway. But the loser, there's no margin for error after this week.
Yeah, no, and that's the best way to put it. No margin for error at all for whoever loses this one. I'm leaning towards Weber State a little bit. It's at home. UC Davis did show some holes on defense, so this is Weber State's chance to get on track. Like I said, if not, both these teams, all of a sudden you're talking about 2 top 25 teams who just fell off the map a little bit. So we'll see what happens there. Any predictions for the rest of the action this week? We do have Portland State at NAU. All of a sudden, the Lumberjacks are kind of a team to watch, and then Sac State at Northern Colorado. You got to think Sac State cruises coming off a bye. But I did want to get your guys' thoughts on that Portland State game and NAU having the chance to come in as a bit more favorites this week after being those carefree underdogs with nothing to lose the last couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be a good game too. Seems like first couple weeks of the year, it seemed like Portland State either put up 80 or got beat by 80. So maybe they'll put up 80 again. I think Northern Arizona is going to take that one though. Like you said, they're coming in a bit more as a favorite. Got some more steam behind them after these last couple weeks.
No, definitely. How about yourself, Mark? Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, going into the season, if you looked at this game, you'd probably look right past it to some other games, some other week and stuff like that. But it is kind of interesting. NAU is in a position of a favorite and stuff like that. And, Portland State has played well at times this year too. But in theory, this is a game, if NAU is really, that good, this is a game they take care of.
Definitely. And that's why I asked. I feel like it's their opportunity to say, not only are we upsetting teams, now we can take care of business when we should. I will say a matchup to watch, Portland State's QB, Dante Stachere. He's a playmaker. He's going to be the guy. If NAU can bottle him up, they got a good chance. If not, it could be a long day for the Lumberjacks. He's going to be kind of the one that I would say watch that matchup, make or break. And then we'll kind of wrap this thing up with just any predictions or things to watch for the second half of the college football season. We're moving into week 7. It's already kind of flying by, an exciting year of Big Sky football. Anything to watch or predictions for the second half? We'll start with you, Ian, and go from there.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see when Vesperis is going to come back for Eastern. Obviously, him being out was a big difference in that game against Idaho, and kind of just seeing where the Eagles can pick up with him if when he comes back this year.
No, well said. When he's on the field, they feel like a top 25 team. Easy as that. He really is a difference maker. How about yourself, Mark? Anything down the stretch you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it seems like, it's obvious that Idaho and Montana State are on a track to make the playoffs. Montana's kind of jumping up into that conversation too. But it'll be interesting to watch some of the other teams that we thought were going to be playoff teams. Sac State, UC Davis, Weber State. See how they play out the last few weeks, and see if they can make a run at the playoffs. And it could be that some of those teams kind of knock each other out with how the schedule lines up, stuff like that. It'd be interesting to see at the end of the year how many teams from this conference get into the playoffs.
No, that's how it feels. It feels like you see it sometimes in the SEC or Pac-12 where the teams are just beating each other up so much it affects them in the rankings, where a team comes out of nowhere, plays spoiler. NAU's kind of been that team. So, no, I totally feel that. I'm really interested to see. My thing to watch down the stretch, and there's a million things you can keep an eye on, but I want to see how Montana State fares. They got Sac State on the road, Idaho on the road. They got to host NAU in Eastern Washington, and then the Brawl of the Wild in Missoula. So, not other than this Cal Poly game this weekend, Montana State's got a true test every week. It feels like they've been considered kind of an FCS power the last couple of years. They're developing in one of those national brands. This is going to really prove it or lose it kind of a moment, because it'd be easy to drop two of those games at Sac State, at Idaho. Those are really tough games. And for a team who's rolled in Big Sky play the last couple of years, I'm interested to see how they handle that, because if they do get knocked off one game, how do they bounce back? So that'd be my big thing to watch. But, of course, tons of awesome stuff to watch down the stretch. It's going to be an absolute dogfight the rest of the year in the Big Sky. And great stuff as always, guys. If there's anything else you'd like to throw out there, if not, once again, a great show, and always appreciate your time.
Yeah, Idaho wide receiver Hayden Hatton threw his second touchdown this year. Now he's 2 for 2 for 70-something yards and 2 touchdowns. It's kind of cool.
Right, I saw that too. Guy's one of those players is every time he touches the ball, he's a threat to make something happen, and now he's throwing the football as well. How do you stop that? No, Idaho's so fun to watch. Their offense is one of the best in the country, no doubt. Hatton being the centerpiece, and even mentioned the other guys from earlier, Woods and McCoy. But no, great stuff. And anything else you want to throw out there, Mark?
Yeah, just looking at Eastern Washington, I mean, they're coming off that game against Idaho, and they have the quarterback uncertainty, but I still think they're good enough to make the playoffs. But they're going to have to win 5 of their last 6 to get to 7 wins. And they got Idaho State this week, Weber at home, then they're at Portland State, then they got Cal Poly, and then they're at Montana State and then NAU. So it's going to be tough, but I think they're good enough to make the playoffs. But obviously they have very little margin for error.
Yeah, no, that's a tough schedule. There's a couple winnable games, but those last 2 are going to be tough. So that's something we'll keep an eye on as well. Does Vesperis come back? Because like I said, when he's on the field, they are a top 25 team, no doubt about it. It feels like they could compete with anybody in the conference when he's healthy. He's that good. So great stuff, guys. Another great week of the Big Sky Now. Always appreciate your time, and looking forward to another good talk next week after this Montana and Idaho game. I'm sure we'll have lots to break down, or who knows, maybe the Vandals run away with it. So it's going to be a fun one, definitely. But thank you, guys, and have a great rest of your day.
Alrighty, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Big Sky Now on the Hagadone Sports Network. I'm Josh Dugan, and I'm out.